Hi, everybody. It is May 18th, 2026, and today we are going to talk all about the Strait of Hormuz. We're going to talk about the Thomas Massie war between Donald Trump and what's happening with there, and all of the different OSINT information that you need to know, analysis. And we're going to cover the war. We're going to cover the maritime action happening in the Strait of Hormuz. We're going to cover all of the flight tracking and really what's going on with that and why this is essential. Iran's going to build in a bank, essentially, a Bitcoin bank out of the Strait of Hormuz. Quite interesting. And on top of that, we also had National Norway Day on May 17th. And there's a lot of news. We're going to cover it all. We're going to look into all the different X stories and what's big. So let's get right into it. Very big news. So let's take a look at this video of Thomas Massie going after Trump. This was not too long ago. And ultimately, again, be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe if you like this information and if you think it's pretty valuable. Let's get right into it.
We fought the president, the attorney general, the FBI director, the speaker of the House, and the vice president to get this win.
It was a win that may cost him his job. Republican Congressman Thomas Massie's crusade to make the Jeffrey Epstein files public was a major thorn in President Trump's side, along with his opposition on some key legislative votes and his criticism of Israel and the war in Iran. Trump unleashing a series of posts about Massie over the weekend, calling him weak and pathetic and the worst and most unreliable Republican congressman in the history of our country. The president hoping for yet another win after he helped tank Senator Bill Cassidy's re-election bid, following Cassidy's vote to convict Trump in his 2021 impeachment trial. Trump's defense secretary Pete Hegseth appearing in Kentucky with Massie's opponent.
President Trump does not need more people in Washington who are trying to make a point, especially from his own party. He needs people willing to help him win.
The race has become the most expensive House primary in history. Pro-Israel groups spending millions to try to defeat him.
You can tell that I'm ahead in the polls and they're desperate. That's why they're sending the Secretary of War to my district tomorrow. That's why the president's losing sleep and tweeting about this.
A rare show of support from fellow Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert brought a prompt rebuke from Donald Trump, calling on candidates to run against her, saying if the right person came along, it would be my honor to withdraw his endorsement of her. Boebert in turn responded that she will always be America first and MAGA. The MAGA, or Make America Great Again movement, is proving resistant to just about everything. A recent Economist YouGov poll finds 93% of those who consider themselves MAGA still approve of President Trump, at a time the rest of the country is deeply discontented. His overall approval rating just 36%. I'm Christine Frizzell reporting.
93% of MAGA supports Trump still. I really honestly don't know how much I believe that at the end of the day, because I think MAGA is catching on to the fact that even Donald Trump said we don't need this Iran war. And I posted a short about that. You can look on Ecker Geopolitics, look at our YouTube shorts, and we just posted a clip. Again, just look through the shorts, and it's Trump essentially saying we don't need the Iran war. We're doing this war for Israel. We're doing this war for Saudi Arabia. We're doing this war for Kuwait. And at the end of the day, we also, what she didn't mention is that the Epstein files, we've been kind of restricted from seeing a lot of what's in there, right? And if you have read the Epstein files already, you would know that a lot of this cabal and a lot of what's happening in D.C., well, the people surrounding Trump are many of those people that were in the files. Howard Lutnick, you really see a lot of these same names. And so the question is, who is Trump working for? And is Trump playing 5D chess, or is this more of a situation where maybe Trump is compromised? Maybe it's both. So ultimately, I find that all to be very interesting. So let's take a listen to this clip as well. I thought this was interesting to outline. We're going to look at a few different sides of the coin here. And again, who do you think is right in all of this? Are you Team Trump or are you Team Massie? At the end of the day, I'd have to pick Team Massie just because he has voted 97% Republican on a lot of these issues. But up until the Epstein files, that was when a lot of this became something that was really a contention between Trump and Thomas Massie. So this is George Stephanopoulos from ABC News. Let's take a listen.
And we're joined now by Republican Congressman Thomas Massie. Congressman, thank you for joining us this morning. You just heard Congressman Raskin right there saying the Democrats are going to move to block this funding if the deal goes through. Will you vote to block it?
Well, I think we should change the laws. It's almost impossible to sue the federal government if they infringe on your First Amendment, your Second Amendment, or your Fourth Amendment. And so we should change those laws so that to give people standing when they've had their rights violated, because people have been wronged. We need to make it easier to get that money, but that's action that Congress needs to take. I don't think you can do that. You can't just take $1 billion or $10 billion unilaterally with the executive branch. Congress has the power of the purse.
So to be clear, then you would vote to block this funding and change the law in other ways?
I don't think there's going to be a vote to block the funding. I would change the law in other ways.
Well, the congressman just said there would be. I guess we'll find out if there is. Meantime, you're facing a primary on Tuesday. In the wake of Senator Bill Cassidy's loss in the primaries yesterday in Louisiana, the president has been up posting on Truth Social throughout the night and into the morning about you. Just a few minutes ago, he posted this. I want to show our viewers right now. Bad Congressman Tom Massie voted against tax cuts, the border wall, our military enforcement. Actually, he voted against almost everything that is good. The worst congressman in history. Kentucky, vote the bum out on Tuesday. We can't live with this troublemaker for another 2 years. He's a true negative force. Your response?
Well, I think that's going to help my fundraising at thomasmassie.com. Every time he tweets about me, it's good for, some money coming in, because people don't like that. And, how did this race become the most expensive race in the history of Congress for a primary? It's because 3 billionaires from outside of Kentucky have funneled millions of dollars in here. They're trying to buy a seat. And so it's not just the president's tweets. I could sustain those without a problem. It's because Miriam Adelson and Paul Singer have dumped money in here.
Bingo.
In fact, Miriam Adelson has given so much money to my opponent that instead of paying for the ballroom, they're going to need taxpayer money for the ballroom now.
Well, you've actually said this week that your vote is a referendum on whether Israel gets to buy seats in Congress. What did you mean by that?
Well, the RJC, AIPAC, and Miriam Adelson and Paul Singer, they're all part of the Israeli lobby, and that's where all the money comes from. And it will be a referendum on foreign policy, whether Israel gets to dictate that by bullying members of Congress. And I'm the one they haven't been able to bully, so they're putting all the brunt and the force on me. But you can tell that I'm ahead in the polls and they're desperate. That's why they're sending the Secretary of War to my district tomorrow. That's why the president's losing sleep and tweeting about this. That's why AIPAC has dumped another $3 million into my race this weekend. It's because they're panicked and they really haven't been able to gain a lead in this race.
You say the president is desperate, but he's got a pretty good record of defeating people he wants to target in Republican primaries. We saw Bill Cassidy yesterday. We saw what happened in Indiana. How are you going to be able to overcome the president's opposition?
Well, I have the endorsement of the Right to Life organizations, the gun organizations. I had 4 members of Congress come here yesterday and campaign with me. So my situation is a little bit different. Plus, I've had millions of dollars come in from the grassroots, tens of thousands of donors to my website, thomasmassie.com, and it's still coming in, and that's how we're going to beat them.
The Senate is poised to pass, trying to pass $1 billion.
Notice he hasn't really mentioned the Epstein files yet, which is like the main kind of contention, in my opinion, when you look at all of this.
In funding for the White House renovation that includes the ballroom, the security funding. The parliamentarian has ruled it out of order, but the Senate Republicans say they're going to fix that. If it comes to the House, will you vote for that funding?
No, I don't think we should. We were originally told that the president's friends were going to pay for this ballroom. And again, one of those was Miriam Adelson. And I think she's poured so many millions of dollars in my race, they don't have enough money for the ballroom anymore from her account.
Congressman Massie, thanks for your time this morning.
So that's one clip from Thomas Massie.
Generic drugstore.
Gosh, ads. Who is sick of the YouTube ads, by the way? It's just like so atrocious. But ultimately, whose side are you on? Are you on Team Trump or Team Massie? This is one more clip that was on X today. President Trump has released a last-minute video pleading with the people of Kentucky to stand with his AIPAC-backed candidate over Thomas Massie. Trump says Thomas Massie is the wrong congressman in the history, worst congressman in the history of the United States. Not Lindsey Graham, not John Thune, not Mitch McConnell, not Nancy Pelosi, not even Adam Schiff. I hope you're going to put him out of business tomorrow. So this is a statement from Trump.
I hope you're going to put him out of business tomorrow. I'm in the Oval Office, and we're in a fight against the worst congressman in the history of our country.
Why so, though?
Thomas Massie. He's from Kentucky. I hope you're going to put him out of business tomorrow. He is so bad. got an election coming up. He's running against a great guy, a great patriot, Ed Gilrain. He's fantastic. But
Pro-Zionist.
forget that. Massie's the worst congressman in the history of our country, always voting against Republicans and good values. So get rid of Thomas Massie.
So again, Trump and Thomas Massie are this is like a UFC fight. It seems like they are just at each other's necks. They're at each other's throats. And there is a true political war happening between these two. Kentucky Republican Thomas Massie is Trump revenge towards next target. Representative Thomas Massie will face off against Ed Gilrain, a candidate backed by President Donald Trump, in a Republican primary on Tuesday. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth campaigned Monday with Gilrain in an unusual move for a Pentagon leader. Trump has targeted GOP lawmakers who he feels has not been sufficiently loyal, ousting a group of Indiana state Republicans who opposed his redistricting push and helping to end Senator Bill Cassidy's reelection bid in Louisiana. Tuesday primary in Kentucky, 4th Congressional District, is the most expensive House on record, as pro-Trump and pro-Israel groups have poured money into outing Massie. After a string of wins in Republican primary elections this spring, President Donald Trump is preparing for the next stop on his revenge tour, Kentucky, where Representative Thomas Massie, a perennial born in the side of House GOP leaders and the president, is locked in a better fight for his political future. This month alone, Trump has successfully led the charge to oust a group of Indiana state Republicans who opposed his redistricting push and helped to end the re-election bid of Senator Bill Cassidy, a Louisiana Republican who focused on convicting Trump in his second impeachment. Now Trump has his sights set on Massie, a libertarian-leaning Republican with a fierce independent streak, who will face off on Tuesday against Ed Gilrain, a former Navy SEAL who was recruited to the race by the president. Massie is an anti-abortion rights, pro-gun, fiscal conservative known for wearing a homemade debt clock on his lapel around the Capitol. But he has bucked the president on the release of the files related to sex offender Jeffrey Epstein and regularly votes against GOP priorities. Well, really, Thomas Massie, again, to my knowledge, has been like 97% like pro-Republican when it comes to those votes, so I don't really know about that. Trump wants him gone, and on Monday he fired off a series of posts targeting Massie. The worst congressman in the long and storied history of the Republican Party is Thomas Massie. He's an obstructionist and a fool. Vote him out of office tomorrow, Tuesday. It will be a great day for America, President DJT. We're in a fight against the worst congressman in the history of our country. His name is Thomas Massie. He's from Kentucky. I hope you're going to put him out of business. We just watched this clip. He is so bad, Trump said in the video, posted late Monday afternoon while seated in the Oval Office. On top of that, Trump and Massie, could President's Republican nemesis survive $20 million attack to oust him? So again, let's take a listen to this clip. Might have to watch an ad because everything's an advertisement in 2026. Maybe not, because maybe this just won't even load. We'll just wait for it. At a rally in a parking lot outside of his campaign headquarters in Florence, Kentucky, on Saturday, Congressman Thomas Massie said that the Republican politicians who joined him had made a brave choice. I'm sure they'll be punished for coming here today, he said. It didn't take long for Massie's warning to prove prophetic, as Donald Trump took a Truth Social post to make his displeasure known. Congresswoman Lauren Boebert of Colorado, who had been barnstorming with Massie all weekend, and Rand Paul, the Kentucky senator who endorsed Massie and shares his unorthodox small government libertarianism, were parading around like fools in the Republican congressmen in the history of our party. The president called Boebert weak-minded and dumb and said that he would withdraw his endorsement of her if a Republican challenger came forward. Trump's threats weren't exactly realistic. Paul doesn't stand for re-election for another 2 years. The filing date to run against Boebert in the Colorado Republican primary has already passed, but Trump's animosity towards Massie is very real, and it has real consequences. Even if Trump was visiting China last week, he was firing off posts attacking the congressman whose district stretches out along the Ohio River from the suburbs of Louisville and Cincinnati to the foothills of Appalachia. He has called him a moron, a loser, and a lowlife, and a major sleazebag. So again, why is that? I think it's a lot of because those Epstein files, not being released and a lot of the victims, coming out. Trump doesn't want that to get out. That's kind of my theory on that. That's my analysis. Honest to God, who really knows what's going to happen, but doesn't really look so good for, I don't know. I kind of predict that Thomas Massie will probably take a lot of the victory on this. But we'll see. Whose side are you on? Who do you choose? Who do you think is right? In March, the president handpicked and endorsed a candidate, retired Navy Special Forces veteran Ed Gallerin, to challenge Massie in the state's Republican primary on Tuesday. Massie's transgressions he has broken with his party on issues near and dear to Trump's heart. He voted against Trump's big, beautiful bill, tax and spending legislation last year because it added trillions to the national debt. He backed rescinding Trump's tariffs on Canada. He voted to curtail Trump's attacks on suspected drug boats in the Caribbean and his ongoing war in Iran. And perhaps most notably, he joined forces with Democrats and a handful of Republicans to force Trump's Justice Department to release all of its files on Jeffrey Epstein, the late sex offender with ties to the rich and powerful. Listen, at the end of the day, as much as I love Trump, as much as I have good feelings for Trump, but at the same time, there needs to be answers for the Epstein files. And, when you've read those files, you can go on the DOJ right now. You can look at all of them yourself and analyze for yourself. Maybe we'll go through the Epstein files another day. But from what I had read, this does appear to be a Zionist cabal, okay? And Epstein and even Steve Bannon was in there. And it seems to me like these guys weren't even blackmailed. It seemed like they wanted to be a part of whatever this was, which was a real trafficking ring and some pretty dark stuff. And so ultimately, that's kind of why I don't really see a lot of positive things coming out of this for Trump at the end of the day. And I'm not trying to choose sides, really. I'm not. My goal is to analyze the news as much as I possibly can from an impartial stance, but that's just kind of my take on it. That's my opinion on it. For Massie supporters, it's evidence of the congressman's willingness to fight for his principles, consequences be damned. He's one of the most consistent congressmen, said Rex Morgan, who attended a Massie meet and greet at a coffee shop in Shelbyville near Louisville. And even if it were to cost him his job, he will not go back on his word. For his detractors, his intransigence and the political vanity of a man immorned with his maverick reputation. He takes pride in opposing Trump so that he can get all of those interviews and stuff like that, said Alan Voles, who lives in Kentucky suburbs south of Cincinnati and serves as vice chair of Boone County Republican Party. It's not that you have to agree on every single issue, but at a certain point, you've got to look towards the big picture and say, how can we all move this ball forward? If Republicans had a comfortable majority in the House of Representatives, as they did when Massie was first elected to the chamber in 2012, such apostasy might be considered a quirky annoyance. But with his party holding power by the narrowest of margins during Trump's second term, the Kentuckian has been a constant headache, delaying or outright derailing Trump's congressional agenda. And again, I think all of this stems back to the Epstein files. I think that's what this is all about, really. You can say that it's, because he voted against tax cuts or he voted against this. But listen, at the end of the day, I think this really all comes down to those Epstein files. I just can't stand this guy, Trump said at the Kentucky rally with Gallerin in March. We've got to get rid of this loser. On Tuesday, that day of reckoning may arrive. If Massie loses, he would become just the latest in a long line of Republicans who crossed Trump and were subsequently vanquished by resignation, forced retirement, or defeat in Republican primaries. If Massie survives to face a Democrat in November, however, it could serve as a sign that Trump's power over his party is not limitless. It could stifle the spines of the other congressional Republicans who may be seeking to distance themselves from a president who, while still beloved by many in his party, has sagging overall approval ratings that could be a liability during a general election campaign. This race has come down to a Trump versus Massie dynamic, said Shane Noam, chair of the Kenton County Republican Committee. It's a pick a side moment for a lot of voters. So again, whose side are you on? Okay, a lot of the people who watch my show are kind of in their mid 40s and 50s, and so I'm very curious. What are your thoughts on Trump saying we don't even need to be in this Iran war? What are your thoughts on that? And what do you think this is really all about? Honestly, I'm truly curious to know. So anyways, as we go on, we can keep reading and reading and reading, but to me, this is it's very clear as day what this is really all about. Trump calls off scheduled attack on Iran amid serious negotiations towards peace deal. So now we're talking about the Strait of Hormuz. We're talking about a lot of that situation happening in that region, okay? We're going to cover some maritime traffic as well in a few minutes here, and we're going to cover everything that happened today, some of the biggest news, how Iran's really going to turn a lot of the Strait of Hormuz into what they call kind of a Bitcoin bank. And so we'll see what that happens, a Bitcoin machine, you could say. So what do you think is going to happen with this? But let's read a little bit into this. Trump calls off scheduled attack on Iran amid serious negotiations towards peace deal. So what to know about the Iran war today? President Trump announced Monday that he was calling off what he said was a scheduled attack on Iran that was supposed to happen Tuesday. The president said he made a decision because serious negotiations were taking place toward a peace deal that Mr. Trump said will be acceptable to the U.S. and countries in the Middle East. I think that's very good. I commend Trump for that. Before Mr. Trump's announcement, Iran had said it conveyed another amended set of terms for a potential peace deal. Tehran says it focused entirely on an agreement to end the war and has not yet discussed any details regarding nuclear matters. Mr. Trump, why can't they just call him President Trump? President Trump had warned Sunday that the clock is ticking for Iran to accept a peace agreement, and there won't be anything left of them if the Islamic Republic's leaders don't get moving fast. White House Deputy Secretary, Press Secretary, Iran must renounce their nuclear ambitions for good. That's not going to happen. I think we all know that by now. Following President Trump's announcement that he is delaying strikes on Iran that had initially been planned for Tuesday, White House Deputy Press Secretary Anna Kelly said Monday in an interview with Fox News that nothing has changed in regard to Iran, and President Trump remains focused on the country's nuclear program. The Iranian ability to enrich has been totally decimated by Operation Midnight Hammer, she said, referring to the June 2025 strikes on several Iranian nuclear facilities. This enriched uranium that they possess, they can't keep it. President Trump has been very clear about that. That is one of the red lines in these negotiations. The president has made our red lines in these negotiations very clear, she said. Iran must renounce their nuclear ambitions for good. And then again, stocks, oil prices year over year amid Iran uncertainty. Oil prices in the stock markets worldwide swung through a shaky Monday with uncertainty about what will happen with the Iran war. The S&P 500 swiveled between gains and losses before finishing with a dip of 0.1%, its second loss since setting an all-time high last week. The Dow Jones Industrial Average added 159 points, or 0.3%, and the NASDAQ Composite fell 0.5% after both indexes likewise year over year, or yo-yoed was the word that used. Stock prices moved in the opposite directions of oil prices, which have been twitchy because of the uncertainty about how long the Iran war will keep the Strait of Hormuz closed and prevent oil tankers from delivering crude. Again, that's a big deal. We're going to be looking at all of that. What you're seeing in a lot of these maritime, shipping routes right now is that you're seeing a cluster. Okay, so if we actually look at this a little bit, you're able to see some of these clusters that I'm talking about. Okay, so let's go over here. Right here, you see all of these red tankers. All of these red tankers are basically crude oil tankers. LPG tankers, a lot of the time, and then you can see some are in motion, some are just kind of anchored down. But usually in the area of Fujairah, this is where you'll see a lot of insurance companies, and when you see these clusters like this of all these little red dots, that's usually a sign that again they're waiting for any kind of strategic. They're waiting for the ability to go through the Strait of Hormuz. You see that there's still not a lot of traffic going through the Strait of Hormuz. Everybody's kind of docked. Okay, so we also have to look at some other areas here if we really want to know what's going on. You have to be able to pay attention to what's going on into the maritime waters. Okay, so we got a lot of different crude oil tankers that are all stuck and clustered in this area. And again, insurers are basically kind of scared of what's going to happen with this entire Iran war, right? You have Qatar, which is a major front for the United States and our military and our Navy. Again, more clusters over here. Got a lot of these multi-purpose offshore vessels and things like that, all clustered up. That's kind of what you have to pay attention to. Okay, you look at the Persian Gulf, and again, seems to be very low traffic on the eastern side of the Persian Gulf here. Okay, Karg Island, who dominates it? Well, if you look around, you're seeing mostly multi-purpose offshore vessels. You're seeing a little bit of tugs and special aircraft. Usually when you see this right here, this vessel is out of coastal AIS range. That typically means it could either be a U.S. Ship, or it just means that their satellite, they've basically shut off ability to be tagged on satellites. But you have a lot of crude oil tankers in this area right now. So it's interesting. This is what Trump wanted to take, was Karg Island. And when we look at Karg Island, you could see it's basically an energy hub, and that's really what they're trying to take. Okay, so you see all of this action, you see all of the movement here. That's really being dominated by the Iranians right now. When you see any kind of, and a lot of the time you're not going to see United States aircraft because, one, we have the most powerful Navy, right? So when you have the most powerful Navy, you're going to be able to kind of hide your ships, especially with proxy ships. And a lot of the proxy ships that the United States uses is typically Liberia, the Marshall Islands, a lot of different countries like that, the Bahamas, Panama, all of these different countries we kind of use as vessels as proxies. So whenever you see those vessels, that gives you a lot of what you need to know. Okay. So as we continue looking on the western side of Saudi Arabia, you can see a very clear line right here. Everybody's staying in like a straight line. Well, that's a good indicator that, again, we're still in, basically this is all risk for these vessels. So they're trying to stay out of the area. Seeing a little bit of trade moving over here, but overall, you're seeing a lot of these different vessels that are moving from the Suez Canal over here. Okay. And this Suez Canal is a major port. And again, you're seeing a lot of anchored crude oil tankers and chemical tankers, right? So really, there's not a lot of motion happening. You have all these different countries who are sitting here. You have some basic bulk carriers and things like that. You see a lot of different movement, okay? But the important thing to look at is the patterns. And when you notice the patterns, again, you're seeing signs that, again, this straight line that you're seeing right here where my cursor is, that's a pretty good sign that they're staying away from high-risk areas, which means you got to remember that the Iranians were putting mines in these areas, and we have to think about that. Okay, something very important to think about. And then, of course, we have the Bab el-Mandeb Strait right here, another very important part of, U.S. maritime trade. And again, so that could potentially be a U.S. tanker right there because you're not able to see it on AIS range. So when you see all of this, got a lot of signs that, there's movement kind of going in and out. But again, a risk assessment tells us that the strait is pretty much still closed. And there's, again, basically, it doesn't seem like things are in real motion. A lot of things are just staying right where they're at. And another good sign of this is that how much traffic is going to the Cape of Good Hope in Africa down here? A lot. So this is the Cape of Good Hope right here. And you see now all of these vessels are basically forced to go around the southern tip of Africa here. So that's a good sign that we're pretty much still in this cluster and that we're not really able to, control that trade route the way we want to. Okay, typically you'd see a lot more trade going through here. And you're seeing this straight line, so that's pretty much straight risk. Everybody's staying away from the shorelines because nobody wants to get blown up by mines. That also means that there's not a lot of trade happening, right? You have artificial islands here, which is basically used for a lot of porting dots and things like that. But ultimately, these are the things you have to pay attention to when it comes to this, okay? And then when it comes to flight trackers, you also see some interesting activity with U.S. These are all U.S. aircraft. I've filtered this over on Globe, ABSB exchange. And again, you're able to see where a lot of these planes are going, right? So we have an AE-07CF that's flying through the sky right now. And United States military, that's a C-17 aircraft. And as you kind of see the track that it came from, it's coming from essentially Cyprus here. And you're basically able to see where it's going. Okay, we got some choppers in the air. And when we look at that, we're able to see that this is Turkish military. Okay, you have a lot of different aircraft in the sky. But remember, we use a lot of different countries for proxy aircraft and things like that. So European trade is basically continuing. And if we take off that filter, then basically you're able to see kind of all of the aircraft that's going in through the area. And so, again, what's going through the Strait of Hormuz, right? When we actually look at this. So again, we have the UAE, they're flying. We have, again, UAE aircraft, more UAE aircraft. So it seems like the UAE is pretty much still in operation. But you don't see a lot of flights going through the Persian Gulf or even the Red Sea. And so again, what does that tell you? Again, a lot of our military aircraft is moving kind of from our allies, right? Qatar. Okay, so you have Indian aircraft here. You're seeing a compilation of Egyptian aircraft. You're seeing a compilation of Saudi aircraft, Bahrain, and then UAE. So where's U.S. aircraft, right? Qatar. Again, so what this tells us is that there's really not a lot of U.S. military activity in that area as much as we'd like it to be. Okay, as much as Trump might be talking about that. Again, right over near the Suez Canal, we have the UAE. UAE pretty much appears to be dominating the Saudi skies. Okay, when it comes to transport and logistics and shipping and all of this stuff, we have cargo vessel or cargo planes, all this stuff. C-17s you'll see in the air. And so you have to really pay attention to the patterns. What's going on in Israel? What kind of aircraft's flying into Israel? Okay, so we have Bulgarian aircraft flying into Israel. Typically, these are, again, we have more Israeli aircraft here. Boeing 737, that's interesting. So when you see these developments, you're seeing pretty much, Malton aircraft over in Israel. You're seeing, again, more Israeli aircraft, B-738. So you see all this air traffic right here, and basically you understand that where things are heading, who knows, right? But there does still seem to be trade going into Israel, all right? Nothing really going into Gaza. Also important to note, Gaza is right about here on the map. And when you look at all of the offshore, it seems like Europe is really assisting the United States and controlling a lot of this stuff. Okay, so again, we look at this kind of activity. We have pretty much no call signs for all of this. So that's important to pay attention to as well. Okay, so that's kind of what's happening with maritime trade, kind of what's happening with the skies currently in the basically the Gulf states. Okay, and so we don't see a lot of traffic coming out of the Strait of Hormuz beside UAE. And again, as far as maritime traffic and naval traffic, we see a lot of, again, the Iranians seem to have control of that Strait of Hormuz still, right? There doesn't appear to be a lot of trade. Now, it doesn't mean that there's no trade happening. Also, that's also important to note. Okay, so there's other places you need to pay attention to. When you see clustering in these areas of like Ras Tanura, or you see areas like, for example, where is it? Dammam. All these different areas, you'll see these clusters of different crude oil tankers. Again, all this kind of stuff is going to tell you that the insurers are not feeling too hot about things. And you see a lot of anchored aircraft here, these little circles versus, craft or any kind of vessels that are in motion, right? So again, Unity vessel, that's a UK vessel right there, British vessel. Overall, though, who knows? What are we looking at? And if you ask me, I think the Iran war, they're pretty much waiting to see what China's going to do. What is Russia going to do? Are they going to step into the game? And are they going to try to kind of control this entire thing and everything that's going on? Okay, so all important stuff to pay attention to, but that's kind of what's happening with the maritime traffic right now. Okay, and you also have to consider that Iran may be turning the Strait of Hormuz into a Bitcoin-based insurance market, local reporters say. This comes from CoinDesk. State-linked Fars News reported that Iran's economy ministry has been working on a plan to manage shipping through the strait with payments with Bitcoin. Iran is exploring a Bitcoin-settled maritime insurance platform called Hormuz Safe to manage shipping through the Strait of Hormuz and nearby waterways. The state-linked proposal would let cargo owners buy cryptographically verified insurance and financial responsibility certificates instead of paying explicit tolls for passage, potentially generating billions in revenue for Iran. Because payments to Iranian state-linked entities can trigger sanctions exposure, any use of Hormuz Safe would pose significant compliance risk for ship owners, trade and insurers, and the platform's operational status remains unverified. But in my opinion, this is a way for the Iranians to kind of end this war without escalation. I don't really think it's the worst idea, right? Pay us some Bitcoin and you can go through. Honestly, not the worst idea. It's better than a nuclear war happening, in my opinion. It's kind of a good deterrence. Pretty good idea. Iran may be trying to turn the Strait of Hormuz into an insurance market. State-linked Fars News reported that Iran's economy ministry has been working on a plan to manage shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, maritime insurance policies, and financial responsibility certificates with payments settled in Bitcoin.
All right, we are here at Consensus Miami, day 2, and I am hanging out with Hugo Finkelstein. He is the co-founder and CEO of Rise. Rise is a company that is rethinking how global teams get paid using stablecoins and crypto rails. So
Very
before
big.
we dive into the data,
Don't forget about that Clarity Act. We have to analyze not just geopolitics but geoeconomics, and this is kind of a mix of both when you see this. Very big developments with crypto, the Clarity Act that's going to be passed in the full Senate, hopefully, on July 4th of Independence Day. That's when they plan on doing that next markup date. It's already passed now to the full Senate, and so that's a really good sign. We're going to see what happens with crypto and stable coins, XRP, Ripple, Bitcoin, Ethereum, XLM, Cardano, Algorand. All of these are pretty decent, options. If I didn't say Ethereum, what else is pretty good in crypto? I would say HBAR is going to be huge because that's Hashgraph, and essentially you're going to see that being used on X payments, which will be coming out very soon, probably after this Clarity Act passes. That'll be some bigger news, the Everything app on X, but all stuff to pay close attention to.
Hugo, do you want to just give us a brief intro? What is Rise? What problems are you solving? And I'm interested to know, when was that moment that you realized that global payroll had major problems to fix and you knew how to do it?
Right. So we started the company basically in 2019. We started, I'll tell you why we got into it, but we started as a marketplace, connecting businesses and contractors and then facilitating projects on chain via smart contracts, so unlocking funds based on milestones.
Yeah.
We launched that in 2021. And basically, after a few months of activity, we realized that we had.
I don't understand if this is supposed to be like what the Iranians are using. I don't know. I don't really know how this connects to the article, right?
If instead of connecting businesses and contractors, we would just give them the tools to hire, onboard, and pay them in whatever currency they want in all kinds of jurisdictions in the most compliant of ways.
Yeah.
So, and at the time it was COVID, so the rise of remote work. Cross-border, hiring was going through the roof. So we thought, we have the payment infrastructure that we built in fiat, stablecoins, and crypto. Why don't we add an HR layer on top of it? So that is, managing the onboarding, the employment agreements, the tax filings, reporting, documents, etc., and sell that to businesses that already know their worker and just want to employ them and pay them all around the world. So that's when we pivoted in 2021, and since then we launched multiple applications on top of our infrastructure.
Crypto is going to be huge.
Contract of payments.
It's going to be huge.
With different compliance levels.
Might just end the Iran war too. I'm not even kidding, as we can see.
We do employee payments as well. So there's countries where we have entities where we become employer of record.
Yeah.
So that is, if you don't have an entity in a country, you want to employ someone, we do the full onboarding. Healthcare, taxes, benefits, payments in the local currencies, in crypto as well, and stablecoins. Direct payroll, bill pay, so a bunch of applications on top of our infrastructure, basically.
So that's going to be pretty big. Again, I don't really know why they put that video in there, but I'm assuming that that's going to be the company they use or something close to that. The platform called Hormuz Safe is said to cover for maritime cargo moving through the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, and nearby waterways. FAR said that the policies would be issued quickly, carry cryptographic verification, and become active once payment is confirmed. A signed digital receipt would then be provided to the cargo owner. The website listed in the report appeared to show only a landing page. Full policy terms, underwriters, exclusions, and claims procedures were not immediately available. CoinDesk could not independently verify whether Hormuz Safe is operational or whether any cargo owners have actually used it. FAR said the model could generate more than $10 billion for Iran, but did not explain how that figure was actually calculated. The plan appears to give Iran a way to monetize its position around the Strait of Hormuz without imposing a direct toll on vessels. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the world's most important energy chokeholds, with a majority share of global oil shipments passing through it. An insurance structure would be less blunt than a toll. Cargo owners would not be paying explicitly for a passage, at least on paper, but would be buying cover, financial responsibility certification, or inspection-related insurance for vessels moving through the waters. Tehran says it can be secure. And that's, again, we were just talking about insurers and how when you see these clusters, again, when you look at these maps of the actual marine traffic that's going on, you see these clusters here of oil tankers. Boom, right here. Boom, right near Dubai. You have a cluster right over here in Qatar, right? You got another cluster over here. All of these, Bahrain, right? You have all these clusters over here on just next to Al Jabal. And so you have all these different clusters that kind of tell you a story. They tell you that what's happening with this is that the insurers are not feeling too hot about this, and they're basically all these vessels are sitting because of it. Same thing, again, I mentioned it before. You see the straight line of all these cargo vessels heading through the Red Sea here. In a straight line, it's not like a scattered pattern of ships and vessels. That's usually a sign that they're trying to stay away, and this is basically risk management and risk mitigation. And that's kind of what they're working on. Strait of Hormuz. And then again, you have the Suez Canal right here. Huge. Again, more clusters over here. This is actually another port. You got a lot of anchored vessels over here. Again, that's a Greek crude oil tanker. But you see all of them. Everybody's anchored up. So that tells me that this war is still potentially on the verge of going hot again. Okay, we're kind of just in a waiting period. We're kind of in a limbo state. That's kind of how I would describe it. More anchored vessels over here. Again, this is, what is that? Panama. And again, you look at, this is just near Hakel, Al-Balad, and you see some vessels all anchored over here. So everybody's kind of in limbo waiting for Trump's movements on this entire Iran war, whether or not we're going to continue it. Again, and again, with this Bitcoin thing, maybe the insurers will feel better about it if, especially July 4th, maybe, when this entire Clarity Act passes, maybe you'll see this southern tip of Africa, you'll see some of that traffic, become a little bit less congested, right? You got a lot of congestion here, a lot of traffic going around this horn because they're avoiding that Strait of Hormuz. Okay, so they have to go all the way around instead of going through this Red Sea, right? So they have to go, instead of going through that Red Sea to Europe, a lot of these vessels have to go around Africa this entire way. And so it's pretty crazy when you look at all of this. But that's essentially pretty much what's going on. And I had covered a little bit of this. I made a tweet not too long ago, like just before this entire stream. Strait of Hormuz instability and maritime choke point risk, OSINT geopolitical threat assessment. Iran war continues and military logistics appear to be continuing to ramp up. Stay frosty out there, X. Then I wrote a whole Substack article on it, really talking about this in more detail. I made these myself. What pissed me off is that on X, it literally said that this is made with AI. I made this image with AI. I made this image with ChatGPT, but I used my own photos. These are my photos, and I had ChatGPT basically organize all of the work that I had done. So this is my work. This is all my work. This is my photo. All of these are my photos, and X said that this is AI. It's like, well, yeah, I used AI to put all of the information together, but ultimately, this is my stuff. And then I made these images on Canva. I just used Canva, and I created my own analysis here. Strait of Hormuz, maritime traffic density, AIS vessel activity, and strategic choke point monitoring, right? So this is like basically the marine traffic that you're seeing. This is at 5:24 Eastern today. And you can kind of see, this is what I was talking about just a few minutes ago. You got these clusters here, elevated tanker concentration, commercial shipping concentration, increases disruption, vulnerability. Okay, so that's a critical global energy transit corridor that we're seeing here. This is where everybody needs to be going through, and they're not, right? So everybody's kind of anchored down. So the assessment is that high-density commercial traffic surrounding the Strait of Hormuz increases vulnerability to geopolitical disruption, maritime incidents, and regional escalation dynamics. Okay, and then when we looked at the flights, I had noticed I had tracked one flight earlier that I thought was kind of interesting. This was that C-17A Global Master 3, U.S. Air Force strategic airlift aircraft supporting military logistics and operational mobility. So again, when you see these aircrafts moving out of the out of Saudi Arabia, what we've seen before, patterns showed us that there was usually strikes that came right after that. So when you see all this military craft moving upwards to Europe, typically it shows signs that there could potentially, maybe, be some kind of U.S. military action in the near future. And so that's why I tracked this specific flight. Strategic Military Transit and Force Projection Corridor. The Eastern Mediterranean Operation Air Corridor offers high-value military transit and force projection zone. Okay, so that's typically where we see a lot of wars kind of kick off. And again, this is the information environment analysis that I created, multi-source verification and timeline reconstruction. Basically, giving you all of the data points on different articles that were released and everything that's happened, right? Multiple unverified reports with photos and short videos, and then, reports align on location and details remaining limited. Smoke plume visible in satellite imagery. Vessel traffic shows vessels diverging. Named officials provide confirmation. Details still developing. So you see all of this. What I'm always doing here is I'm tracking the timeline. Because you have to track the timeline of all these things that are happening in a war, right? Because this is information. This is what real intelligence is. Initial reports emerge. Social media accounts report explosions near a commercial vessel transiting northbound in the Strait of Hormuz. That was, again, today, 14:03. Regional media reporting Regional news outlets report an incident in the area, citing maritime sources without providing specific details. Then at 1425, satellite imagery review, high-resolution satellite imagery reviewed for the area. Possible smoke plume observed near reported location. International media confirmed that at 1442, this was Reuters and AP, they published reports citing that officials familiar with the situation confirming an incident occurred. And then there was the official statement released by the Maritime Security Authorities, which issued an official statement confirming the incident. So that's like the flow of information, and that's when you know this is basically the process of verifying all of these different articles that you'll see throughout your days. Okay, so it's important to look at all that. If you want to read the Substack article, go follow me on Substack. You can kind of read more into that geopolitical analysis and kind of what I was tracking today, and kind of just what I was able to identify. So take a look at that, see what you kind of think. If you agree with it, great. If you don't, oh well. I thought somebody left a comment. So yeah, so now let's look at some of the X stories. Speaking of information and articles, I think it's important to look through all of the biggest stuff happening, right? And so I bookmarked some things, and now we're going to look at the media. We're going to look at a few different stories on X. Well, we'll look for more than a few. We always go through maybe 10 to 20 different videos and tweets, whatever. But this is an important part because guess what? X is open source. Okay, YouTube is not open source. It's close to it. It's getting better, but X is the best platform when it comes to real-time information and news, right? So it's important that we're always tracking X when we look at all of our analyses and when we're looking at all of the information that's coming, especially in times of war, right? The Iran war, everything that's happening, geoeconomics, and then, everything that we're seeing today. So again, this came from Watcher Guru 2 hours ago. The SEC prepares to allow blockchain-based tokenized stock trading. And then this is huge from Crypto Rover. BlackRock CEO Larry Fink just said something insane. The U.S. is short on power, chips, memory, and compute. I believe a new asset class will emerge, futures on compute. He's calling it $1 trillion asset class in crypto, decentralized compute, which is examples of RNDR, AKT, IO, TIO, or TAO, is already building exactly that. Permissionless, tokenless, 24/7. Wall Street is naming the trade. Crypto already built the rails. Extremely bullish. So again, this was Larry Fink.
Power right now. The United States is short power. We're short compute. We're short chips. And there are going to be shortages in all three. And memory.
And remember, just last week, Donald Trump and President Xi had a meeting and a negotiation, you could call it. And China said, we don't want to give up Taiwan. Taiwan is huge for us. Taiwan is very important to us. We want our semiconductors, and that's our land. And so now that China has revealed or basically observed that the United States is struggling, it seems, to win this war against Iran, China's saying, well, you know what? We built a nuclear program that's just as good, similar to Iran's actually, where they have nuclear bunkers underground and all of this stuff. And so now they're saying, well, you know what? America, you can't really push us around and tell us what to do anymore. And so the reason this matters, Larry Fink's here talking about semiconductors and microchips, and you have these same globalists from BlackRock and all these places telling you that China's going to be the future. Well, now you see it kind of happening. China's taking Taiwan, and they're probably going to own a lot of that semiconductor market share. That's kind of my prediction, at least. That's my analysis. That's kind of what I see. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. Ultimately, it depends on what Congress does in the United States, whether or not we take the forefront on crypto and all of this stuff.
Four things. I actually believe a new asset class will be buying futures of compute. We just don't have enough compute power right now.
Data centers, basically, is what he's saying.
The United States is short
So
power.
again, yeah. I mean, that's, who knows? AI data centers, cryptography, all of this stuff. Really, it can all go into a great direction, but we're kind of doing things wrong. But this was also interesting. A lot of people don't really trust this guy, Professor Yang. A lot of people think this guy is Mossad, and a lot of people think this guy is a Chinese communist agent. Whatever you think, he still, in my opinion, has pretty decent analysis. So let's just take a listen to what he has to say here.
But America has always had a draft. But for the longest time...
Yeah, and he's talking about the military draft here in this clip. So, hold on.
It didn't really care whether or not you actually signed for the draft. And starting in December, participation in the draft will be automatic, meaning that if you're between 18 to 24 in America and you're male, you'll be automatically put into the draft system.
From when?
I think from December.
This year?
Yes, that is correct, yes.
So between the age of 18 and 25, you think?
Oh boy.
And what does that really mean? Well, I've not really experienced that in my lifetime. So it means that if you're between the age of 18 and 24, either gender,
No, male.
male, then you have to sign up for the army.
No, you are already put into a draft.
Oh, you're already, okay, but you might be called upon.
That's right. It's a lottery system.
They're turning it on. They're CNN. Automatic military draft resignation, automatic military draft registration takes effect in December. Here's how it would work.
Again, this is a little clip from Alex Jones. I know some people don't like Alex Jones, but I think he does pretty decent analysis. So I always like to, listen to some of his clips.
You got Massie, the candidate running against him, saying we need the draft installed now. We can't wait. We got to go to full world war. Play the clip yesterday. Can't make it up. And you got a professor here out of Canada talking about this. You can go look this up. Indeed, this all goes into place. Europe's fired up the draft again. They're getting ready. Here it is. Clip 58.
But America's always had a draft. But for the longest time, it didn't really care whether or not you actually signed for the draft. And starting in December, participation in the draft will be automatic, meaning that if you're between 18 to 24 in America and you're male, you'll be automatically put into the draft system.
From when?
I think from December.
This year?
Yes.
That's
that is
crazy.
correct, yes.
So
They're just drafting anybody they want. They're just saying, nope, we need soldiers. We want to win this Iran war. So what does that tell you? Right? We are ramping up for more war. Whatever that means, whether it's Iran war, whether it's even against China, who knows what's going to happen or what's happening in the minds of Trump and the people around Trump, the administration around Trump, the staffers around him. Doesn't seem like they want to end this war anytime soon. And neither do the Israelis, the Zionists. And so that's kind of the biggest problem that we have right now with our president, Donald Trump, is that he's surrounded by these Zionists who want to continue this Iran war, even though it doesn't really benefit the United States, at least in the eyes of the public.
18 and 25, you think, and what does that really
In
mean? Well,
majority.
I've not really experienced that in my lifetime. So it means that if you're between the age of 18 and 24, either gender,
No, male.
male, then you have to sign up for the army.
No, you are already put into a draft.
Oh, you're already, okay, but you might be called upon.
That's right. It's a lottery system.
They're turning it.
Crazy. So that's ultimately what's happening. They're forcing a draft, and they want, basically, who knows? Maybe America's going to become the next Ukraine, where grown men are getting thrown into white vans, maybe even men like me. I have a little bit of intelligence in military and law enforcement. God, if they chose me, oh boy. All I know is who knows if I'm going to really go out there, right? But ultimately, we're going to see what happens with all of it. It's going to be quite an interesting thing, but we'll see. We'll see. So this is, again, a post from Elon Musk. This was just 22 hours ago. Where will AI be in 1 to 2 to 3 years? Where do you think AI will be in 1 to 2 to 3 years?
Let me just, share a few thoughts with you on this. Number one is, in the last few months, there has been a step change function in the productivity of the AI toolkit. It is profoundly more powerful than it was just 9 months ago. And for us at Citadel, that has allowed us to unleash a much broader array of use cases for AI. And it has been really interesting to watch, to be blunt, work that we would usually do with people with masters and PhDs in finance over the course of weeks or months being done by AI agents over the course of hours or days. So these are not mid-tier white-collar jobs. These are like extraordinarily high-skilled jobs being, I'm going to pick a word, being automated by agentic AI.
Are you guys ready to be replaced by agentic AI? Are you guys ready? Like, seriously, are you guys, what future do you think we're heading into? Do you think we're heading into the Terminator 2 future, or do you think we're heading into the Star Trek future? We really have two choices when it comes to AI, in my opinion. We can either have the Star Trek future, where we can go to new star systems and rediscover zero-point gravitational technology and all of this crazy stuff. We can learn the secrets of the universe, all of this stuff. Or we basically just create the next Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator superhuman, and he's going to kill us all. And, it'll be something like that. What do you think is going to be the future of humanity?
And I got to tell you, I went home one Friday actually fairly depressed by this, because you could just see how this was going to have such a dramatic impact on society.
It already is.
And when you witness it in your own four walls,
Safe
when
to
you
say.
see work that used to be man-years of work being done in days or weeks, it's like, wow, like that's the first time I've seen real impact in our four walls.
Yeah, AI is going to be huge. It already is. I think AI is already impacting people. It's already impacting the world in pretty big, significant ways. Armenia is building what will be the largest statue of Jesus Christ in the world. Very interesting. I don't want to get copyright. But ultimately, the largest statue of Christ is being built. What do you guys think about that? Very interesting. Very interesting. I think that's rather good. I think the world needs more of it, to be honest with you. Again, we watched that clip of President Donald Trump. This is an update from Alex Barnico. Give him a follow on X. He's a great analyst, and he covers the war great. He probably puts out maybe 5 to 6 posts a day, maybe even more. He covers the war. He does a great job doing it.
The world's most important countries, BRICS, just held their annual meeting, but for the first time they didn't issue a joint statement because they spent the whole meeting arguing with each other. Specifically, the foreign ministers of Iran and the UAE were both at the meeting together, and it's safe to say they didn't get along very well. However, India released a statement and they confirmed this. India said, quote, there were differing views among some members as regards to the situation in the Middle East. Now, for the sake of diplomatic relations, no country mentioned another country and attacked them. That wouldn't happen. But the Iranian foreign minister did issue a backhanded attack at the UAE without explicitly saying their name. He said, quote, we have no difficulty with that certain country. They have not been our target, but we hit the American military bases, which are unfortunately on their soil. He then said, quote, I hope that they soon come to a good understanding that Iran is a neighbor and we have to live with each other. The Iranian foreign minister, speaking about the UAE, said, quote, we have lived with each other for centuries and we have to live together for centuries to come. So really, Iran has called for peace with the UAE, but according to other statements, they didn't get along very well. And for the first time, they haven't issued a joint statement, all of the BRICS countries, talking about how well the meetings went. Probably because one half of BRICS supports Iran and the other half really doesn't. And the war in Iran has really highlighted this, and it actually could be the downfall of BRICS, this war. That's really not a great thing for Iran or for them anyway. But it is a good thing for the US, and so that's one positive for the US starting the war. Let me know what you think, but for some more global news like this, you can leave me a follow.
I would say that's a good analysis because that does appear to be what's happening. The UAE had an entire conversation with Iran, and basically these two countries are at each other's throats because the UAE basically works for the United States, right? We give them a lot of money for oil, and basically just because they sit on a lot of oil as the Saudis do, and they've basically been backing the United States and Israel in this war. So the Iranians see that as a betrayal against their own people. And so that's why there's this huge, huge divide between these two countries specifically. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that all really develops. And also you have China and Russia, and, really they want Iran to thrive because they want to reap the benefits of that oil. But China also wants to control Iran, and Iran wants to control the entire strait. And so you have China and Russia basically working. China and Russia would be the best, at least the best chance to end the war, at least as a mediator and a middle ground person, if you wanted to call it that, right? They're negotiators. It would be the best chance to end this war, to come to some kind of mediation, some kind of neutral agreement. Because again, Iran wants to not give up any of their nuclear enrichment program, and basically they want no more sanctions. They want complete victory over the United States, essentially. Obviously, with Donald Trump, that's not going to happen. Trump wants them to have zero nuclear enrichment capabilities. Again, not going to happen for the Iranians. So really, they're asking for things that are completely outside of the scope of possibility. And so it's probably going to take China and Russia working together to end this war, in my opinion. That's kind of where I see things going with that. What are your thoughts? So again, massive processions are taking place in towns and cities across Norway for National Norway Day. Anybody who's Norwegian, proud of you. Love to be Norwegian, love to be Scandinavian. I'm proud of my little bit of my heritage there. Warning, Bill Gates just sold 100% of Microsoft position. The Gates Foundation Trust liquidated a final $7.7 million in Microsoft shares, roughly $3.2 billion gone in hours. After decades of holding the company he co-founded, the man who built Microsoft from a garage just walked away from every last share. That tells you something's coming. What is coming, guys? Like, what are they going to do? What are they really planning for everything? Are they planning some kind of nuclear event? Honestly, that's kind of, who knows? Because, again, the Strait of Hormuz appears to be pretty stagnant. And, again, just based on the maritime activity that seems to be happening, who knows? But we can only hope that the war does come to an end, of course. No limit. Posted this. Someone just paid $112 million for SBUX calls. This wasn't a series of small trades. It was a single massive options contract for the $75 calls that expire on June 18th. The stock is currently trading at $106.67. They bought 35,341 contracts in one shot. Open interest for that strike was only 69 contracts. This is a brand new position, and it's gigantic. The volume to open interest ratio is over 512x. The trader just made an enormous bet that SBUX is going to run much, much higher in the next 32 days. So, hey, maybe that's a good investment. Maybe. Something to pay attention to. The UAE caught lying about these small hats. Again, I would look at that, but, I don't know. Maybe we should. We'll watch it. We'll watch it. We'll see what We'll see what he has to say.
While Israel was dropping bombs on women and children in Gaza, the UAE gave them $2.3 billion. So do you guys really want to know how deep the Israelis...
And so you see why the Iranians have had such a problem with the UAE recently.
Corruption goes in the UAE. Do you guys want to know the real truth on how this supposed Muslim nation is nothing more than a fake Muslim Epstein list? So to know the truth about the UAE, you got to get familiar with a man named Samuel Shea. This is the man who wrote up the Abraham Accords. And in case you guys don't understand, the Abraham Accords is a agreement between the UAE, a couple other nations, and Israel. This is one of the things that Trump brokered and basically took supposed Muslim countries and sold them out to Israel. So first of all, Shea was the guy that introduced Epstein to all the businessmen in the UAE. And funny enough, he's also the guy responsible for freezing all of Hezbollah's assets and locking up a lot of their bank accounts so they can't get resources for what they're doing over there. So what's interesting is Samuel Shea was just hacked by an Iranian group that goes by the name Handala. Now, they released 265 pages of his contact information and tons of photos about the guy. Now, this hacker group also revealed to us that Samuel Shea is the guy who's lining up these defense contract deals between Israel and the UAE. Now, the UAE just denied that they've received any kind of missile defense systems and military deals from Israel, which is weird because that's a part of the Abraham Accords. But not only that, it gets a lot deeper. Now, the UAE is lying to our face by claiming they don't get military support from Israel because there's a contract with Elbit, which is Israeli military manufacturing company. This contract was the contract that gave Israel $2.3 billion while Israel was dropping bombs on Gaza. So yes, the UAE denied the claims that Netanyahu even came over there, but in that same breath, they lied directly to us about the defense contract, saying they don't even receive it whenever there is a contract with Elbit. But since we're on that subject of UAE's lies, let's move on to their claim that Netanyahu did not come and did not do these secret visits with them, which is really funny because I have the exact flight logs of the jets that had Israeli military escort going back and forth between Tel Aviv and Abu Dhabi. Now, what's happening in the UAE is almost identical to what's happening in America, but they use this Shea character to send in Epstein to blackmail all the businessmen over there. And one of the top guys even stepped down from his high-paying position because it got exposed. The UAE is dictated by Israel and Netanyahu, and I don't care how many people want to attack me and threaten me. You denying that the UAE has alliance to Israel is like me denying that America has alliance to Israel. It's the exact same situation going on. And this Iran war is exposing all of it. All of this whole Zionist game and puppeteering that's going on is being exposed by the Iran war and Iranian hackers. And no matter how many bots or how many threats on my life that come in, I'm not going to change my stance. I'm going to continue exposing every single piece of this, and I'm going to continue showing you guys the evidence behind all of this corruption until it's gone.
I thought that was a pretty good analysis. Wasn't sure if I wanted to play it just because you never know what YouTube's going to do to you. So what do you guys think about Nick Shirley? Nick Shirley was just in Cuba. Apparently he was held prisoner, but ultimately I think Nick Shirley could be CIA personally. And the reason I say that isn't because I really like Nick Shirley. I don't have anything against him, even if he was working with the CIA, whatever. But at the end of the day, I think he's CIA because CIA often hires Mormons. And why do they hire Mormons? Because Mormons are required to learn 6 languages, right? And it's very interesting. So this was his speech, though. Again, I'm not against Nick Shirley at all. I think he's definitely brave. But at the same time, you also have to notice that Tommy Robinson, as much as, I like a lot of the things he says, I like a lot of the movement he's doing, we do have to remember that Tommy Robinson himself has said that he is a Zionist. Whatever that means to you, it is important that we have to, we have to make that distinction and know maybe that's not something that people should just be hidden from. So what do you guys think about this clip of Nick Shirley? He made the Brits say USA. I think that's kind of funny.
Today I've walked with some of you here, and as I was walking, one sign really crossed my mind. There was a sign today that said we did not vote for open borders, digital ID, two-tier policing, higher taxes, loss of free speech, pedophiles in politics, higher cost of living. Now your media will call you far right, and your Prime Minister will call you guys dangerous. But the ideas of freedom of speech are not dangerous, or the idea that you want to know who your neighbor is does not make you dangerous.
The freedom of speech is the most important amendment we have, and everybody should value it more than anything. Your First Amendment protects your Second Amendment, and your Second Amendment protects your First Amendment. No matter who you are, whether you're left, whether you're right, if you're an American, if you're a Brit, whatever, if you're somebody who believes in independence and sovereignty and freedom and liberty, all of these things, you cannot have these things without a First and Second Amendment. So very important to have your freedom of speech, the press, freedom of religion, freedom of press, all of these things, freedom of ideas, you name it.
Sense. We live in a world where common sense is becoming somewhat abstract to have. A lot of people don't have it these days. In the United States, we let an entire state commit billions of dollars in fraud because we were afraid, our politicians were afraid of being called racist or Islamophobic for speaking out against the fraud.
Yes.
Here in the United Kingdom,
that's true.
You guys had young women be raped by gangs of men.
Also true.
And your politicians allowed it because they're afraid of being called a racist or Islamophobic.
Over 500,000 young British girls were raped just last year, 2 years ago, or what was it, like in the past decade or something like that? Very crazy.
That does not make you a racist for speaking truth. No one should have to worry about where their tax dollars go. No one should have to worry if it gets spent into fraud or not, because we should have the confidence in our politicians. We shouldn't have to worry
Nick Shirley's
that our
a beast.
Are having to be careful who they go around, or a young woman in Scotland who is 12 years old shouldn't have to walk with a hatchet at the playground. I've been coming here to the United Kingdom for some time now, and each and every single year these marches get bigger and bigger and bigger. I think it is time that your Prime Minister and that your government takes heed to your words and takes heed to the caution that you guys are giving them, because change is inevitable here inside of the United Kingdom, and it doesn't need to be done because everyone should have the right to say what they want and have the freedom of speech.
100%.
And may God bless you all, and thank you, Tommy Robinson.
Again, I'm not a total, anti Tommy Robinson. I just think he's somebody that people should definitely keep an eye on. You got to keep an eye on those types. And only because, at this current time in history, there's a lot of contention with the Zionists and what they're doing with this Iran war. Got to be very careful about all of these schemes and the games that are being played. Again, this comes from open source intel. Abraham Rezai, spokesman of the Iranian Parliament's National Security Committee: if war resumes, Iran's enemies will suffer far more damage than Iran. Take that as you will. That was just yesterday. The most depressing video you will watch today: ending the Heart Cellar Act will not be enough. The damage is already done.
90%. The Dust Bowl brought 350,000 mostly white migrants from the Midwest. The post-war boom brought more. Then the Immigration Act of 1965 opened the doors, and California changed. By the year 2000, white Californians dropped below 50% for the first time. California became only the second state in America, after Hawaii, where no single race held a majority. Today, Latinos are the largest group at 41%. Whites are at 34%. Asians at 17%. No majority, no single dominant culture, just California, the most diverse place on Earth. By 2040, projections show 73% of California will be people of color. This is the California that's coming.
Now, It's not a bad thing that California is diverse. I think the issue with it is that you have to pay attention to the histories and you have to pay attention to our modern time. In the state of California today, you can blame it on a variety of things. Maybe it's the politicians, right? Maybe it's the politicians. Maybe it's Gavin Newsom that's doing it. Maybe it's Karen Bass. I think that's a big part of it. But there is a real problem with all of these countries that seem to be this melting pot, right? And so there does need to be some form of a true homogeneous society, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, there also needs to be, an actual Christian faith, in my opinion, a Catholic faith, whatever you want to call it. And I'm not talking about Protestant Christianity. I'm talking about Catholicism mostly. They're two completely different things, right? But at the end of the day, I think that's really important. California used to be 97% white, and now it's not. And so take that as you will. What do you think about that? What is the reason? And I'm only saying this as an example because California is just crazy today. It's like a human experiment. When you look at all of the corruption, the crime, and you look at, just the things you see on, go watch anything on Hollywood. Go watch reality TV. Look at what you see. And it's like, maybe there is such thing as a melting pot. Maybe there's something that we have not been paying attention to. And maybe that's one of those things. Unvaccinated Chief Warrant Officer 5 Kenny Kelly, a master aviator, has officially been reinstated to the U.S. military with full back pay, entitlements, station preference, and benefits after being removed due to refusing the COVID jab under Biden. LFG, I voted for that. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely good.
Lost trust with the American.
So we'll watch this clip real quick.
Joe Biden's mandate to force military service members to take the COVID-19 vaccine was wrongfully and unlawfully applied because the Biden Pentagon refused to grant exemptions for certain.
How many of you in the comments section, how many of you watching this right now were forced to get the vaccine? I'm actually really curious. How many of you that are watching this right now, how many of you were forced, whether it was for your job, whether it was to go to college, whether it was to do anything, maybe see a relative in the hospital? How many of you were forced to get the vaccine against your will? And that's my question. And how many of you did get the vaccine? I remember just going in through the academy and all of this stuff, the police academy, half the class was asked, would you get the COVID vaccine? And half of them raised their hand. And I think it was like they were taking a litmus test to see who would be willing to take that vaccine, who would be willing to basically, just do it if they were told they had to. And they were it's like a litmus test. They wanted to see exactly, who would be willing to. And if there was enough people, they were going to make that like a thing, like it was going to be a requirement. And I also remember in college, I was just getting out of college. I got out of college at the best time, right as all of this was starting. And it couldn't have been better timing. But it was crazy. They were doing all of the dorm checks and all of this stuff. Talk about communism and talk about the test of submission. Talk about the test of, just the willingness to go with whatever the government tells you to do, like animals, like a herd of animals, like an animal farm. Sheep going into the slaughterhouse. That's really what it was to me. And I never got the vaccine. I never got it. Maybe I'm bad for that. But at the end of the day, glad I didn't.
Certain medical and faith reasons, not to
So
mention.
this is one of the better things that the Trump administration has done.
As a result, many service members and their families suffered severe hardship, and the department lost trust with the American people. President Trump's executive order on this topic stated that the military unjustly discharged those who refused the vaccine, regardless of their conscience.
Do you remember that video where they pinned down that U.S. Army soldier, or it was like a U.S. Army or U.S. Marine, and they pinned him down and basically forced the vaccine into his arm? That's crazy. And you also think about how many Special Forces operators did we lose in the military that could have been exceptional soldiers, exceptional combat fighters. Think about how many great soldiers, highly intelligent technicians and, engineers. Think about the high IQ people that we pushed out because of this stupid World Health Organization movement that was completely a psyop, right? You had the dancing nurses, dancing for the vaccine. That was crazy. I just remember all of that. Just absolutely wild.
For the years of service given to our nation. He called this what it is: an unfair, overly broad, and completely unnecessary burden on our warriors. Under the leadership of President Trump, the War Department is committed to doing everything we can to make it right, as you know. We want warriors of conscience. warriors who made a principled stand for truth. We want them back in our ranks as soon as possible. We are welcoming back to service patriots who refused the COVID-19 vaccine and were discharged for that reason. If that is you, and you still have the desire to once again wear the cloth of
Oh, see, that's what it's really about. They just want those soldiers, right? They just want you signing up to go fight Iran. That's really what it's about. That's why they're just okay, that all makes sense now.
We are ready to reinstate you.
I understand. I see how it is.
With benefits. I'm directing the Undersecretary of War for Personnel and Readiness to establish a Department of War COVID-19 reinstatement and reconciliation.
This is all for the military. This is all like to basically get people to join the military again. They really need as many troops as possible, and they're going to do anything they can to do it. Just wild. At the end of the day, it's not a bad thing, I guess, to have, strong military. But the thing is, it's the way of which they're doing it. It's like, hey, ladies and gentlemen, we've made the laws so that if you are getting the COVID, if you were persecuted for not getting the COVID vaccine, now you can join the military again. Wink. And what's the real intention behind that? They just need more soldiers to fight this Iran war. They need somebody to go and fight it. And it's honestly, it's quite interesting to watch.
Just have them right now. We're establishing one at our level to oversee the entire thing. The task force's goal is to bring back into service all those who desire to continue to serve our country in uniform. Even if you do not intend to return to service, the War Department will provide a path for resolution of unearned bonuses, upgrades to discharge characterizations that will unlock your well-deserved benefits, and removal of adverse documents.
Very sneaky.
Further, I have directed a review of policies and decision-making to ensure that we do not go down this path again.
It only took an Iran war, guys. That's all it took. All it took was the Iran war, and then finally we were going to get some justice for the COVID era. 2 American soldiers have died because they could not swim, allegedly. The kids are all right. Former CEO Google, Eric Schmidt, gets booed every time he mentions artificial intelligence during his commencement speech at the University of Arizona. This generation may have just saved humanity after all. This is crazy. Look at this clip. This is wild. He just gets totally, just annihilated.
Of artificial intelligence. Interesting.
The crazy part is, he doesn't even care. He's just like, ha, ha, ha.
You will help shape artificial intelligence. We do not know. We do not know the precise contours of what this. If you'd let me make this point, please.
$43.3 billion. People aren't looking forward to that AI.
Choose a diversity of perspectives, including the perspective of the immigrant.
Oh gosh, he's comparing AI to immigrants now.
Country and made it better.
Cringe.
We thought that we were adding stones.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't see that before. Epstein connections, the files. Schmidt's name resurfaced in the Department of Justice Epstein files. I didn't know that.
Cathedral of knowledge.
Interesting. And again, he was the former CEO of Google.
But the world we built, artificial intelligence that reflects those values.
The claims Ritter alleged that Schmidt stalked her, spied on her digital communications, and forcibly raped her on multiple occasions between 2021 and 2023. God, I don't even remember seeing that. I watched this clip and I totally missed those little side bites there. And then he just leaves.
You are surrendering your agency. We have only seen maybe 1% of what is to come. I'm very proud of this. If you don't care about science, that's okay, because AI is going to...
See, they always like to do that. Like, oh, you don't care about science. You don't care about AI. You don't care about science. You have a problem with AI, so you don't care about science. They always just take it to that next place. And it's like, really, I'm an AI guy. Gold Shark Media AI. I built my own AI company where we help business owners do the same thing. But it's like... Dude, I don't want to build data centers in small towns with a population of 1,000 people and drive them all out when we could have offshore AI data centers. Offshore, the same way we do with oil rigs. We could do the same thing. But no, they got to put them in your small town and take your home through eminent domain. Just pretty horrible stuff. Is there going to be a revolution? That's my question. I think possibly.
Everything else as well.
Not looking so hot for AI.
If you want to learn
He's so happy about it.
new and you want to have a personal tutor in any language for the cost of an internet connection, you can have it. You can now assemble a team of AI agents to help you with the parts that you could never accomplish on your own.
Man, he's just getting booed like crazy.
On the rocket ship, you do not ask which seat. You just get on. The rocket ship is here. Let me give you some advice. First, find a way to say yes. Listen. You bring the judgment. You bring the conscience. You bring the perspective. And I'll give you one final reflection. Happiness, I have come to believe, is not the same as joy.
What?
Happiness is derived from meaning.
Oh, Lord.
Meaning in your work, meaning in your relationships. Thank you very much and good night.
And then they finally clap when he leaves. That's hilarious. What are your thoughts on AI? You know, ultimately, again, like I said at the beginning of the episode, I think it's either going to be a Skynet or it's going to be a Star Trek future or it's going to be a Skynet Terminator 2 future. And right now we're heading into the Terminator 2 future, if you ask me. Jack Muller's released a video explaining how Bitcoin demonizes housing and drives prices down for families. Okay, yeah, you can check that out. Well, we're running close to the end of the episode, though, so we'll probably end it here. At the end of the day, be sure to work with me if you want to get into real estate, Michigan real estate. I can be your real estate agent. And again, BrendanEckerRealty.com. Fill out the contact form, book a Zoom call, we'll chat, help you get your first real estate property or whatever it might be. And if you want to become a real estate agent, you want to make some extra income, I created an online course for future real estate agents. Helps you pass the state licensing exam. It's relevant for all 50 states. So no matter where you live, it works. It's 1,300 practice questions, ebooks, lesson chapters, interactive videos, and PDFs for maximum value. $99. Pay for it once, and pretty much you're good. You don't have to pay like a monthly subscription. You pay for it once and done. And these were just some of the other realtors that bought it. But it's pretty helpful, and we're going to add more to it. But again, if you want to make some more money, then consider becoming a real estate agent, and this will help you do it. And then, of course, if you are an online business owner, definitely work with Gold Shark Media AI. It's goldsharkmedia.com, and essentially it's just a CRM. But we also offer white label software, lead capture, prospecting, all that kind of stuff. It's your entire business. You can run it in one place. I built this all by myself. Again, you have your ROI calculator all here. Again, this is great for business, in my opinion. Took me a while to build it, but at the end of the day, I figured out the code and figured out how to do it. So again, goldsharkmedia.com. I'll be at your side to help you every step of the way. A lot of this is in beta mode. We're trying to upgrade and trying to optimize really a lot of the social media connections and things like that and those APIs, but still pretty good stuff. We have our Google reviews and reputation. You got a lot of pre-built templates and things like that. You can build up AI apps with this, and we kind of run that in a pretty efficient manner. We have templates already here for, again, roofing companies, HVAC, med spas and clinics, law firms, marketing agencies, home service companies, e-commerce brands, real estate professionals like myself, right? I'm a real estate agent. So whatever, again, you can use this. You manage your own domain from one place. You got all your integrations, Calendly, Slack, Microsoft 365, Sending Grid, Twilio, Zoom, Google Meet, all that stuff. And then again, let's look at some of the comments. I guess we got a lot of comments here. So the parts you can never accomplish with only 7 million in the USA and only 800,000 dual citizens. Oh no, you did because he accused me of not caring about science. Yeah, seriously, right? We would have 5 million on the ground now. Can you imagine if we had Joe in? The unchosen question, it's about Esau and Ishmael. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. That's right. Trump B and Phi, what does that mean? I'm just reading through the comments before we go here. 2 of them are Deb. I couldn't get anyone to read even that section, that few I did. Took it anyways. And listing by age for probability that you will include your incurable heart disease for death. Yeah, a disclaimer. Middle of the EAU under the section titled Post-Marketing Data. Anyone that reads the entire EUA would never take it. Oh yeah, Callergy plan. Yep. I know what that is. The Great Replacement. That's huge. People need to learn about it. It's a very real thing. Tommy Robinson words for, yeah, that's true. Yeah. I like it. I'm liking the comments. I like it. A lot of these are true. A lot of these are a little crazy, but a lot of these are true. Blessings, everyone. Absolutely. Blessings to all of you. Trump suffers heart attack in round 1. Hopefully not. We don't wish death on anybody. Massie and Passy. I don't know what that means. Who knows what's going to happen with all of it. But at the end of the day, yeah, we want America to win. We want America to thrive. I believe in America first. I do believe in making America great again. I just don't necessarily consider myself MAGA. I think MAGA needs to wake up to what's happening with the Zionist state of Israel and all of that. Absolutely true. That's absolutely a fact. That is happening in our country. And so it is really sad. But at the end of the day, got to be able to take ownership of our own country. We got to be able to, be in a state where we can be independent again, where we can be free again, where we can have an opinion again. All of these things matter. And then going back to this, era of our founding fathers, right? Our founding fathers were indeed white men of good stock. That is the way they described themselves. They were Protestant Christians, but at the end of the day, a lot of them were Catholics. And, they believed in independence when they came to the New World and when they sailed to the Atlantic. They believed in fleeing the British tyranny and all of that was happening, right? So, again, that clip of Nick Shirley and speaking in the UK, very, very big, very important, because the most important thing that the UK could hear right now is the freedom of speech. The best thing for Europe and the United Kingdom would for them to have, number one, probably even more of than the First Amendment, they need a Second Amendment. You need to have the right. You have the right to keep and bear arms, and every citizen on earth, who is sovereign and free, who is fair-minded, and you should have the right to keep and bear arms. And then also you have the right to speak for that right, which is your First Amendment. You have to have both the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, or else you cannot have real freedom. It will never be real freedom. It will never be real liberty. And this is what our founding fathers believed. Really, having guns was a form of deterrence to tyranny in a time where exactly what you're seeing in Britain today. They have no rights. You get arrested for a Facebook post today, and you can't defend yourself. And then you go out on the street in the UK, and, you have this Muslim takeover that's happening. You also have, listen, at the end of the day, that's just a real thing. I hate to see it. But at the end of the day, who's letting them in? And why are the Muslims moving or migrating to these countries? Well, a lot of it's because the United States and Israel currently are carrying on this entire war. And I would say I would really blame the state of Israel more so. But ultimately, that's kind of my thoughts on things. And that's kind of what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. We'll cover this a lot more tomorrow. We'll get back into the action and we'll cover more of the breaking news. But at the end of the day, that's all I got for you. Stay prudent, stay powerful, stay wealthy, God bless, and be safe.